Welcome to the Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI, your home for the politically homeless, streaming live at KVI.com and the KVI app. If you want to be part of the most dangerous show on the airwaves, call or text the Warrior Injury Law Studio line at 206-421-5757. That's 206-421-5757. Coming up this hour, politicians try to look tough against Sound Transit's disaster, which they helped cause. But before we get to any of that, time for a story you're not going to get anywhere else.
Talk Radio 570 KVI, an Ari Hoffman Show exclusive.
Over the weekend, there was another Christian rally, this time at Gasworks Park, which for those of you who don't live in Seattle, you remember the scene in 10 Things I Hate About You, where you have Heath Ledger and Julia Stiles playing paintball, where they're throwing paintballs at each other. That's Gasworks Park, except there's no paintball there, sad to say. So they have this big religious rally out at Gasworks Park. And everybody was wondering, are we going to see fireworks between Trans-Tifa, Antifa, and the Christians? Well, the Seattle police did a great job of keeping the groups separated, where you had the radical activists far away from the Christian rally, and everything went down pretty much without a hitch. You had people like Cam Higbee going out there to interview the psychos, and they decide to be what they are and prove him right and give him great content and great footage as always. But other than a few things of that nature, there really weren't any fireworks. Mayor Bruce Harrell wants to get elected again. He wants to be reelected to be mayor of Seattle so he can sit on his butt and do nothing. So Saturday night, after the Sabbath is over, I come back online as I usually do, and the first thing I do is head on over to Jonathan Cho and Cam Higbee's social media accounts. And I'm looking around going, what happened this weekend? Were there fireworks? Were people yelling? Were there assaults? And I didn't see any of that. What I did see was Pastor Russell Johnson from the Pursuit Northwest Church, friend of the show, reading a text that he got from Seattle Mayor Bruce Harrell during the rally, talking about how great it was and how much they appreciate First Amendment stuff. And I remember hearing this and not calling out the pastor. He's reading a text he got from the mayor, and he's saying, look, we won. The mayor's singing our tune now, and he's right. But then I remembered I had a public disclosure request I've been sitting on for a little while that I haven't had a chance to read through. It's Saturday night, so I do some reading through this public disclosure request I got back. I had filed it after the riot / assault / you name it at Cal Anderson Park in May, when Trans-Tifa and Antifa and far-left activists showed up to harass all these Christians who went to a rock concert / rally in Cal Anderson Park, claiming they were there to defend their turf in the historically LGBTQIA +- ampersand Park. Now, what was your excuse for showing up to Gasworks Park? Gasworks used to be a giant factory. Is that also LGBTQIA + historical land? Should they have done a land acknowledgement before having their Christian concert there? Or do you guys just like to harass Christians? Because that's all you proved by doing this. So I go and I went back to the emails. The public disclosure request I filed was for all communications from the mayor's office about their response to the riots in Cal Anderson Park. And what I found was truly fascinating. The first thing I found was that they had deliberately tried to paint the Christians as an extreme right-wing event. That was their whole goal. In fact, all the emails between the mayor's staff, let's not forget, this was Memorial Day weekend, were talking about how to paint them as extreme right-wingers. They pulled up their bios to say, see, look, they're extreme right-wingers. How can we make them look? How can we demonize them more and more and more and more? The mayor's staff also appeared to downplay the role of Antifa, who were throwing urine at the Christians. They also enlisted local clergy to reinforce the city's messaging. So this was all while Bruce Harrell was out of town. I filed another public disclosure request not too long ago. A source of mine told me that Bruce Harrell wasn't even the mayor of Seattle that weekend. When the mayor goes out of town, that means the president of the Seattle City Council is Mayor Pro Tem, which basically means substitute mayor. That means Sarah Nelson was in charge. But you know the fascinating thing about all these statements that were allegedly released as if Bruce Harrell had written them? He's not CC'd on any of these emails. He's not sent any of these emails. You know who else wasn't CC'd or sent any of these emails? Sarah Nelson. So I reached out to every single person who was on those emails because, hey, their email addresses are on those emails. And I emailed every single person in the Seattle mayor's office who's on those emails. Jamie Howson, his communication director. Natalie Walton Anderson, policy advisor. Tiffany Washington, deputy mayor. Greg Wong, city attorney liaison. Callie Craighead, digital media manager. And Carissa Braxton, who's just a staffer. Not a single one of them have gotten back to me. Now you may say, Ari, it was a holiday weekend. They had plenty of time to chat over Memorial Day weekend. What, you think they weren't watching this like hawks to see if it was going down badly or not so they could do spin on it that time? You think that text sent from the mayor exactly when they were having the rally wasn't pre-planned and the verbiage approved by everybody in that office? I'm sure that it was. But with Harrell away, these staffers, not the mayor himself, appear to be effectively running the city's crisis response. And I don't remember electing Carissa Braxton, Callie Craighead, Greg Wong, Tiffany Washington, Natalie Walton, or Jamie Howson. In fact, I don't remember ever seeing any of their names on a ballot before. So who are these people to be running the city? What else were they running? What else are they running? Here's what's worse than even that, than not knowing who's actually running the city. Because I have long said that Bruce Harrell likes the title of being mayor, but not actually doing the job of being mayor. So who's actually doing the job? Is he one of these guys who just shows up for press conferences and photo ops, but isn't actually doing anything? Instead, he's letting his staff do everything? So this is a little bit different than the Joe Biden situation. Joe Biden isn't capable of making a decision. Joe Biden was senile. Bruce Harrell doesn't care. He just likes the perks. He just wants it on his tombstone. He just wants his picture up in the mayor's office. He just wants his around-the-clock security. That's what Bruce Harrell wants. What I think is even worse than that is the members of the local clergy who were asked to issue statements condemning the Christians. Some of them are Christian themselves, who said, oh yeah, we'll go along with this, no problem. Like Pastor Carrie Anderson from the First AME Church, Reverend Reginald Avant from the Madrona Grace Presbyterian Church, Reverend Alex Booker, Queen Anne Baptist Church. What, do you guys get government funding or something? Why are you guys so quick? Is it about access? Is it about the mayor asked me to do something, so I'm going to criticize fellow members of the cloth? Fellow co-religionists? Is that what I think you're going to do? Because that's what it seems like to me. In addition to this, you also had Rabbi Will Berkowitz and Rabbi Daniel Weiner, who are included in this list. Now, Rabbi Will Berkowitz runs the Jewish Family Services, and I'm curious what kind of government funding they get for Jewish Family Services, what kind of government grants they get from Homeless Inc. and other agencies. That's something I'm now going to look into. And Rabbi Daniel Weiner. You know what upsets me about the two Jewish leaders being involved in this? Pastor Russell Johnson is the one who led the protest against the Gaza encampment at the University of Washington, which I spoke at, which I attended, which a lot of other Jews attended because you had an anti-Semitic violent encampment in the middle of UW. I didn't see either of you there. I didn't see either of you guys. So this Christian pastor was doing a job you two should have been doing as Jewish leaders. Where were you? Why weren't you guys having their back? And here's something else. Don't you think that Pastor Russell Johnson has earned enough brownie points going to bat for the Jewish community that before you condemn him because the mayor asked you to, you could have at least given him a phone call and said, hey, bro, what's up with this whole thing? I like that you're speaking about LGBTQ values because, I don't remember seeing any of that in the good book. I question where your religious ordination, where your rabbinical ordination came from because the LGBTQIA stuff is actually spoken about in the good book and not in a good way. So why are you backing them against co-religionists who stand for some of the same values you are supposed to do so? Every single email from these guys back and forth and the distributed clergy quotes was meant to strengthen the administration's narrative that the Christians were a bunch of far-right lunatics, extremist far-right people. Now, Pastor Russell Johnson at the time called out the mayor for victim blaming. They were the ones who got assaulted. And Bruce Harrell is blaming them for it, not Antifa. But was it even Bruce Harrell? I remember at the time, and I went back and double-checked the mayor's statements. They were all published by Jamie Howson. Now, he's the communications director. And in the mayor's absence, maybe the mayor didn't have access to his account, but let's be real. This is the 21st century. What, you think the mayor can't put up a blog post? You think the mayor isn't reachable by phone? Why weren't they copying him on any of these emails? And the easiest way for these guys to say I'm wrong? The easiest way is for them to go, we called him on the phone and he approved it that way, Hoffman. Hoffman is lying. But I asked for all communications because then I'm going to ask for their phone records. Because then I'm going to say, hey, guys, you gave me the emails. You didn't give me the phone records. You didn't give me the texts. Were you guys even talking to the mayor's office? Or, the mayor himself. This was all the mayor's office doing the talking. So you remember, Pastor Russell Johnson, and rightfully so, had a rally outside of Seattle City Hall demanding Bruce Harrell either apologize or resign. And instead of doing that, he doubled down calling them extremists. And Antifa doubled down by showing up to harass them again. So the PR from this was so terrible and went so national that Bruce Harrell knew he had a big, big problem on his hands. So when the Christians said, hey, we're going to have another rally, and this time in Cal Anderson Park, you can't deny them a park permit. So instead, Bruce Harrell begged them, along with Joy Hollingsworth, Seattle City Council member, begged them to move it to a different park. And they moved it to Gasworks Park. I don't know why the Christians agreed. Maybe that's a turn the other cheek kind of thing. That's not how we roll, but fine, to each their own. But they agreed, and I don't think they're looking for a fight. I think they're looking for an actual rally. They weren't looking for a fight last time. They didn't want to go to Cal Anderson Park. They asked for another location. It's the city that sent them to Cal Anderson Park. But once again, who's running the show? Because I had the one public disclosure request, which was about the communication and the emails. But I had another one about Mayor Pro Tem, who was actually running the show. And here's what I got from May 23rd at 5 p.m. through May 26th at 3 p.m. By the way, that's all of Memorial Day weekend. Harrell was out of town. During that time, Council President Sarah Nelson served as Mayor Pro Tem. She is not mentioned anywhere in these emails. So who was running the show at Seattle City Hall? Where was Bruce? And I'll remind everybody, you remember the last big crisis we had in Seattle where Bruce Harrell wasn't here? It was New Year's weekend of 2024 when Hamasniks started marching through Seattle, vandalizing buildings, and then blockaded I-5, running through the heart of Seattle for over 6 hours. Bruce Harrell was at a Husky game because the Huskies had a championship game and wasn't here either. And that time his office didn't issue any statements whatsoever. Was it just everybody was on vacation? Everybody was just checked out? Who is actually running Seattle? And then I compared this to Joe Biden. You know how the Biden administration, everything seemed like everybody was running their own scheme, their own mishigas, their own nonsense, not in concert with the other parts of the administration. They were just doing whatever they wanted, which is why the Biden mantra, the Biden doctrine is chaos. I don't even know how one thing related to another except that it was all progressive left ideas. That's it. If you asked me to define the Biden mantra, the Biden doctrine, it would just be progressive as progressive as progressive can be. But that's why none of these things made sense. In fact, many times they were running counter to each other. So I come back to my original thing. Who's running Seattle City Hall? Is anything better around here? And I think it's because Bruce Harrell isn't actually running the show. If Bruce Harrell was running the show, then you'd be able to say, well, he tried this and he tried that, but we don't know that. All he does is show up for the press conferences. That's all he does, is show up for the press conferences and spew language about one Seattle, because we're one Seattle, and I played UW high school, UW college football. Woo! Woo! And we have leftist values. Woo! That's all he does. That's all he does. So I'm going to put this question to the audience. Do you think that Bruce Harrell is actually running the show? And do you want another 4 years of Bruce Harrell being MIA? Now, some of you may say, oh, that's better than him actually doing with the crazy leftist stuff he's now trying to do to compete with Katie Wilson. Maybe that's better. But I don't think so. What, you think his staff isn't more radical than him? Of course they are. And just like Joe Biden, that means they're going to push the lefty policies. Here's something else about the mayor's office. It is leaking like a sinking ship. I am getting all kinds of tips out of City Hall. I don't get tips out of City Hall. They don't like me over there. Look, I got sources all over the place. The people at City Hall do not like me. If I am getting tips out of Seattle City Hall, somebody knows I'm going to use them to attack Bruce Harrell and take him down so that Katie Wilson can be the mayor. All this stuff I got on my own. Do you think there is an organized effort to get rid of him by his own staff, by the own lefties in Seattle City Hall thinking, let's get Katie Wilson in here. Let's get the socialist communist type in here. Then we can really run our agenda. I'm wondering who is running Seattle, because right now it seems like it's the staff and not Bruce Harrell. Sure seems to be out of town a lot. Look, when you sign up to be mayor, you agree that you're going to be here for stuff. You don't get the same amount of vacations. You don't get to just take off, and I understand everybody needs a break. But you are mayor of Seattle, and there was a major crisis that weekend, and according to these emails, you were MIA again. So who's actually running Seattle? Homeless Inc., BLM, Antifa, far-left radicals? Let me know what you think. Give us a call or a text at 206-421-5757. That's 206-421-5757. And today, Bruce Harrell, trying to look tough, decided to have a press conference along with other King County leaders. What are they trying to look tough about? They're trying to look tough about the Sound Transit, declaring that they have $30 billion less than they thought, and now they're in trouble. We'll give you all details when we come back. You're listening to the Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI. So last week, we find out that Sound Transit needs another $30 billion to complete the projects they have planned, and they don't have it because of blowing the budget every single time on everything they do, and because taxes aren't coming in as much as they used to, because a lot of people ain't paying their car tabs, a lot of businesses have moved out, and you've really reached the Laffer curve. Anybody who studies economics, the Laffer curve basically says is that there comes a point where people will say, this is just too expensive, screw it, I'm not paying your taxes anymore, and judging by the amount of car tabs out here, I'm not the only one. And that's what's happening. So, running behind schedule, running over budget. Hey, by the way, if you guys had actually been on schedule, this whole thing would have been done years ago before inflation even happened. You are victims of your own stupidity. So, what happens today? There is a press conference. And who's leading the charge? Seattle Mayor Bruce Harrell. And you've got Teresa Mosqueda out there, and you've got all these other politicians out there saying, no, Sound Transit, we are not going to let you not finish the light rail. None of them had any solutions for this, which means, you know what they're going to do to make up the $30 billion? Taxes. They're like the lion in the Robin Hood cartoon. King John, Prince John, whatever his name is, and he's got all the coins. Taxes, taxes, taxes. He's throwing the coins up in the air. That's the Democrat politicians around here. We're going to finish that light rail, which very few people ride. We're going to finish this thing regardless of how much it costs you. That's what they were basically saying at their little press conference today. Yep, we need that light rail running out to West Seattle. Hang on a second. Are they going to put the train on the West Seattle Bridge? Because last time I heard, that bridge wasn't in good shape. I remember hearing a bunch of problems about that bridge. You going to run the light rail over that thing? That's going to be a lot of fun to watch. Or are you guys going to build a new bridge? It'll cost you 6 times what it should because it's a government project. Or better yet, wait, hang on. Seattle, I got an idea. Let's dig a tunnel. Let's put a tunnel under the water out to West Seattle. Let's do that because that worked out so well for, downtown and for the viaduct. Let's do that too. Oh, and Ballard, let's send it out there. Do you know why they're trying to act tough all of a sudden? Number one, a whole bunch of them are involved with Sound Transit, so they look like the dummy heads. But at least they're saying, oh, now we can blame Sound Transit. No, you'd better give us the transportation you promised. But also they got an election coming up. And lefties love transit. And Bruce Harrell is running against the head of the Transit Riders Union. Never mind the fact that Katie Wilson and the Transit Riders Union have nothing to do with transportation. All they care about is far-left radical causes under the guise of caring about transportation. Want me to prove they don't care about transportation? These are the guys who endorsed Uba Gardir, our favorite bus bombing suspect, the woman who walked onto a bus filled with students, with middle schoolers, and threatened to blow it up. And the Transit Riders Union endorsed her because she was a far-left progressive. Transit Riders Union do not care about transit. Transit is just on the low list. It's what they use as a shill. It's what they use as a beard to say, here's all our progressive agenda. You better accept it because we care about transit. Transit Riders Union does not care about transit. They care about socialism. They care about communism. They care about radicalism. That is all they care about. So Bruce Harrell said, an opportunity. Now I can look good to the transit people by saying, you better finish that train. You think Bruce Harrell cares if you finish that train or not? He does not care. You know how I know? When is the last time you saw Bruce Harrell on one of these trains? That guy has a Seattle Police Department driving him everywhere these days. You think he cares about the trains? I did notice something interesting, by the way. Bruce Harrell and I have similar commutes because we live near each other. I noticed the roads along his commute are getting fixed. So, hang on a second. Oh, it took you this long to figure out that the roads in our district are absolute garbage, but most of them are the roads that lead to City Hall. Probably because he said, I want you to prioritize these because, I can't really check my email so well in the backseat while I'm being driven around if I'm bumping around everywhere. My limo doesn't have off-roading gear on it. Should have gone a Renton Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram. You could have gone a Jeep Rubicon like they hooked me up with. That thing can take those potholes like a champ. I love they've been giving me SUVs because my Batmobile does not do well on those at all. At all. We go to the Warrior Injury Law studio line, take a call from Transit Joe. Transit Joe, I hoped you'd be calling on this topic. What's up, man?
A lot of things. But first, before we get to the topic, I want to have you thank President Trump and the Trump administration for closing our borders to the Nazis, Palestinians, Gazans, take your pick. Really appreciate that news last weekend. Really great work by Secretary Rubio. Although I voted for somebody else, I'm very grateful for that.
Hang on a second, Joe. For that, you get special music today. Hang on, you get very special music today for that. Joe is actually saying something nice about President Trump, so he gets the special angel music. Congratulations, Joe, on getting your wings. We're very, very proud of you.
Now I've got my angel wings. Can we please have the Sound Transit Board directly elected so that instead of it being a hobby, it's a full-time commitment by fans of Sound Transit to make the agency actually deliver on time and not constantly have to have Claudia Badass Ucci, our next King County executive, do all the thinking and maybe not build 2 tunnels.
Hang on a second. Joe, you had me up until you said nice things about Claudia Balducci. I was about to give you the wings again for agreeing with me on the voting thing. But by the way, I know you've done that a long time. She's part of the problem. She's one of the people who's been involved in all this stuff for ages. Just because she's better than the other guy doesn't mean she's good.
Yes, but we don't want Jeremy, who gets out of the room when that Nazi Alex Zimmerman gets up, instead of throwing him out like the Seattle City Clown Show finally did today. So
I think I got bigger problems with Gurmay Zahalai than Alex Zimmerman. My problems with him involve the fact that he's a socialist and that he wants all the things you don't want. I'm not voting for Claudia Balducci because she is just right now trying to say, well, I'm a little bit better than him, so vote for me. I look at her track record. I can't name anything good she's actually accomplished.
Oh, man, where do I begin? But before I do, just in case we run up against time, I do want to confirm a lot of what you said about the Transit Writers Union. It's sort of a, let me explain it this way. It's sort of like a name that covers a lot of progressive causes, like a $15 minimum wage. You wonder why things are expensive. Like trying to make everybody ride fare free. It's a very left wing group, and if you want, it's just an awful choice Seattle has to face.
Yeah, it really is. It really is. And that's coming from Transit Joe. His name is Transit. He knows transit. Trust Transit Joe and know that the Transit Writers Union is not good for you. Joe, appreciate the call as always. Appreciate you being part of the show. Yeah. You want to be part of the show, you give us a call or text at 206-421-5757. That's 206-421-5757. Mike says over on the text line, I worked in transit for 5 years, cost and schedule overruns, but this is ridiculous. Usually when things got this bad with a client, we would pull all personnel and enter the lawyers. Transit authorities have few engineering resources, so they rely on a series of consultants. They said, I know people who work there, but not on the Sound Transit project. This is a great point, by the way. We know that government projects overrun costs. We know they overrun budget because they give it to their buddies, as opposed to saying, hey, let's have a real process here, and they don't hold anybody accountable ever. But at this point, this is just fraud at this point. Complete waste of taxpayer funding. So this one here from Jeff and Kent. So we can tax our way out of this. Imagine that one. Oh, so true. So true. John in Lakewood says Seattle is run by Olympia, which is run by corrupt, progressive, billionaire, and state-funded nonprofits. Money from radical Islam and the drug cartels. I don't think you're wrong at this point, John. Normally I'd say, that's conspiracy theories. But who's benefiting from Homeless Inc.? Massive, massive nonprofits. You know who else is the number one beneficiary of Homeless Inc.? The drug cartels. Because the people on the streets are buying the drugs. I saw something fascinating yesterday. Mike, I forgot to tell you this. So I had this big barbecue festival at our synagogue. And I had to go fill up 5 propane tanks because that's a lot of barbecuing we need to do. And I go down to my local 76 or whatever station it is where they have the propane refills. And I saw the craziest thing. I saw a car pull up, mid-range car, not a nice car or anything. And this guy gets out and goes and sits on the corner to start collecting money. He even had a wad of cash on him. And I'm like, wait a minute. So this is just his day job. Who's dropping him off in the car? So when the gentleman who's running the gas station came out to help me with the propane tank, I said to him, I said, my friend, what is this all about? What's going on here? And this, I believe he's either Pakistani. I think he's Pakistani. This guy is all mad about the homeless thing. He says, what's going on around here? The homeless are everywhere, and it's getting worse, and this is private property. And we try and get rid of him, but they think they have more rights than us, and they say nobody's ever going to get rid of him. And this is an immigrant talking about this, who's saying, I came here for a better life, and look at the hell it is here in Seattle. Insane. Absolutely insane. When we come back, my friends, more to cover. The left's latest conspiracy theory that President Trump was dead all weekend. Guys, stop with the Joe Biden comparisons. You're just not pulling it off very well. We'll give you all the crazy details when we come back. You're listening to the Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI. Just to circle back to a controversial topic we did on Friday, we were discussing how the Air Force has now decided that Ashley Babbitt is going to be getting full military honors for a funeral, even though she didn't get them at the time. Now, for those of you who weren't listening on Friday, because it was a holiday weekend, the discussion focused on this. I asked the very simple question. I said, if a veteran who served honorably did a crime after their service, should they be penalized for that with their military record, like when it comes to being buried with honors? Now, we had a lot of spirited back and forth, had a lot of discussion about this, and basically anybody who called the show, including veterans, said unless they committed a serious felony, a violent felony, they should get them. Our friend Carrie called us, literally read from the VA's code for how you get a funeral, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And it almost basically said the same thing. It said, unless you kill somebody, you're still going to get that funeral. So the conclusion we reached was, or at least the one that I reached was, Ashley Babbitt was no hero, but at the same time, she did serve honorably, and she wasn't convicted of anything. So she should get the military funeral. And the Air Force had screwed up the first time by not giving her a military funeral. Well, something fascinating happened during the course of this whole nuanced discussion. A lot of people called me with a lot of theories about what happened on January 6th. And they said, Ari, the video you watched of what happened to Ashley Babbitt is just a small little piece of the footage. I said I had seen the footage from when the gun comes out, it's pointed, and people go, gun, 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 and then Ashley Babbitt gets shot. Now, you see Ashley Babbitt climbing through the glass. Now, a lot of you said, Ari, you haven't seen the complete video, and you sent it to me. A lot of you were very mad at me that I hadn't seen the complete video, and I said I would watch it over the weekend. So I watched it over the weekend. What this video shows is a lot of the rioters saying slurs against the police officers, and then at some point, the police officers either get an order or decide to leave on their own and leave the area. And then the rioters continue smashing the windows, which they were doing with the police officers there, and Ashley Babbitt is still trying to climb through the window. If anything, after watching this video, I am more mad at the rioters of what I saw. Now, mind you, do I think the police should have left? I don't know if they got an order. I don't know if they decided, hey, we're outnumbered and we're going to die here or whatever the case may be. I don't know. I don't know what was in their heads. I don't know what was in their hearts. But at the same time, this video does not explain why somebody would climb through a busted window. Just because the police move out of the way when you're smashing glass doesn't mean you should continue to smash the glass. And so far, nobody has provided a good explanation of why she was climbing through a shattered window. So at the end of the day, I yield to what the VA says. She served with honor. She served with distinction. She was never convicted of a crime. She gets a military funeral, and she should have gotten a military funeral at the time. I also do not think that she's a hero. You want to disagree with me? You want to yell at me? You can give us a call. You can give us a text at 206-421-5757. That's 206-421-5757. Switching gears to the present, over the weekend, I wasn't even paying attention to this. I was so busy with this massive barbecue event, I almost missed this entire thing. Social media, when I came back online Saturday night, had all these conspiracy theories that Donald Trump was dead or at Walter Reed and Melania was going to see him. It was so bad that actually I'm sitting with Matt Gilbert at this barbecue event, friend of the show, and a buddy of mine sits down next to me and he goes, so Ari, is Trump alive or dead? I go, is this for real? Are people actually talking about this? So what happens is last night there's a big announcement that Trump is going to have a big press conference in the Oval Office today. And I said, this is going to be a nothing burger. The left was going, is he going to resign? Is J.D. Vance going to be stepping up? Is he going to say he has some horrible disease? No, that's Joe Biden's gig. We'll let him keep doing that. That's Joe Biden's gig. And instead, I said, I bet you this is a giant nothing burger. A giant nothing burger. What was the announcement today? They're moving the Space Force back to Alabama. Okay, nice, good for Alabama. But at the end of the day, is this a huge, huge announcement? No. This was a proof of...
How about no?
Exactly, Dr. Evil. This was a proof of life to make the left look stupid. I just wish he had come out and been like, I don't know what they're talking about. They are super dumb. Quite frankly, I was fine all weekend, having the best time, went golfing, hung out with the grandkids. I am not Sleepy Joe. You covered for Sleepy Joe all this time. You don't cover for me. You don't say anything nice about me. I'm the best president. I was waiting for that. I was really hoping I was going to get a lot of that. Got a little bit of that. Got a little bit of him actually calling out the Democrats.
It's sort of crazy, but last week I did numerous news conferences, all successful. They went very well, like this is going very well. And then I didn't do any for 2 days, and they said there must be something wrong with him. Biden wouldn't do him for months. You wouldn't see him. And nobody ever said there was ever anything wrong with him, and we know he wasn't in the greatest of shape. No, I heard that. I get reports. Now, you knew I did an interview that lasted for about an hour and a half with somebody, and everybody saw that was on one of your competitors. I did numerous shows and also did a number of truths, long truths, I think pretty poignant truths. No, I was very active over the weekend. They also knew I went out to visit some people at the club that I own pretty nearby on the Potomac River. And no, I've been very active, actually, over the weekend.
I wish the whole press conference had been that. I really wish the whole press conference had been like, you tried to get Trump again. You didn't get him. I'm still here, living large. I wish that had been the whole press conference. I really do.
I'd like to make a distinction between us, conservative Republicans, folks on the right, and our friends on the left.
Mm-hmm.
My social media feed was rotten. And when I mean rotten, I mean literally rotten with the amount of people wishing harm to the president.
Mm-hmm.
I hope he's dead. I hope he had a stroke. I hope this. I hope that. They walk among us, Ari.
Yeah.
That's disturbing.
So I'll say this, Mike, and you beat me to it, actually, because I had meant to make this point at the beginning. We never wished for harm on Joe Biden or Barack Obama. In fact, there are multiple...
Obama!
Exactly. There are multiple podcasts which you can go back and listen to. And what I said every single time is the president of the United States dying or something happening to Joe Biden while in office would be terrible for him, terrible for the country. I said that multiple times. I said it again and again. We were calling out the fact that he's not actually president, not actually running the show. The Democrats, like Tim Walz, seem to want something else.
You get up in the morning and you doom scroll through things, and although I will say this, the last few days you woke up thinking there might be news. Just saying. There will be news sometime, just so you know, there will be news.
Can you imagine living your life hoping somebody else is dead? Can you imagine that, hoping your political enemy is dead? Look, Mike, we have political enemies. We have people who don't like us very much. We don't wish them ill. We don't wish them dead. That's a little crazy. That's a bridge too far, and people have lost their minds. We go to the Warrior Injury Law Studio line, take a call from Ken in Freeland. Ken, what's going on?
Hi, I got some tickets for a UW football game from Go Tickets.
Okay.
And I just got an ad for them to sell some more tickets. And it says comedy and theater. And the first thing listed is Kamala Harris. I'm gonna send you the screenshot I took of it. It's just comedy and theater, and then it's listed as Kamala Harris on November 4th at Benaroya Hall.
Oh my God, that's amazing! Please, Ken, please send that over. ARIKVI.com. Please do that.
I will send it to you immediately.
Oh, that's amazing, Ken. Thank you for the call. That's fantastic. You want to be part of the show? You give us a call or a text at 206-421-5757. That's 206-421-5757. When we come back, my friends. Why would anyone trust anything a government health official said after COVID? We'll answer that question, plus more of your texts, more of your calls when we come back. You're listening to the Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI. Question for the audience. After COVID, maybe even before COVID, do you trust any government health agency? I'm going to tell you why I don't. And it has nothing to do with conspiracy theories or anything else. They were wrong. They haven't said they were wrong. And as long as you're run by the government, you can always be politicized. Every single time. A healthy dose of skepticism for our government is a good thing no matter who is running it, whether it's one person's agenda or another person's agenda. The left freaking out about what RFK Jr. and President Trump are saying regarding health should say, hey guys, maybe none of this stuff should be under the purview of the federal government. Do you need a health response to disasters? Absolutely. But can you do it without politicizing things? A long point I made on COVID was that nobody's going to trust you guys after this, no matter if it's a Democrat or a Republican in office, because you guys were so wrong, got things so terribly wrong, and then double down, triple down, quadruple down when people called you on it. You guys didn't follow the science. You guys followed a political agenda. And let me put it to you this way. President Trump came up with Operation Warp Speed. That was his thing, to develop the vaccine. Do you remember everybody on the left while he was still in office before, while he was running for a second term, saying they weren't going to take the Trump vaccine? And then all of a sudden they switched on a dime. Now you all have to do it. I wonder if Trump had won in 2020, do you think that it would have been all the Trump people saying we need to take the vaccine and all the people on the left saying, no, it's going to have the nanites in it or whatever the case may be? That would have been fascinating. Absolutely fascinating to have an alternate timeline where you could actually see this happening. Stephen Miller was talking about the credibility of the CDC outside the White House just the other day.
As we know, the CDC's credibility was shattered during the COVID era. This is now widely understood and widely acknowledged. And CDC used to be, of course, or seen widely around the world as a premier health agency. And much of the world discovered in the last few years that CDC was actually staffed by a lot of very partisan, very political bureaucrats who weren't at all concerned about public health and weren't actually very knowledgeable about public health. And we are working hard. And more importantly, Secretary Kennedy, one of the world's foremost voices, advocates, and experts on public health, is working hard to restore the credibility and the integrity of CDC as a scientific organization committed to the scientific method.
That's something else that's important. Remember, follow the science, follow the science, follow the science, but nobody ever actually followed the science? Is that the direction we're heading? Well, if you ask people on the right, they say yes. If you ask people on the left, they say no. I think this is the problem with having health decisions being made by bureaucrats, no matter which side they are on. We go to the Warrior Injury Law studio line, take a quick call from Stilgar. Stilgar, running out of time. What's going on, man?
What I was speaking to talk about, which I think the epidemic is actually of ignorance and gullibility. I think that people are too willing to just, believe the lies. They'll say, oh, it'll only be $15 billion for sound transit. Now it's $150 billion and counting. All these things will be optional until they're not optional. It's like, oh, well, if it's voluntary, it's fine. It won't be voluntary. It's voluntary until it's not. We have seen these things before. People need to wake up, grow a spine, and say, you know what? No, just no. Central bank digital currency? No.
Well, that's the whole thing with this.
No.
That's the whole thing is that who mandated the vaccines? The left was mandating the vaccines, even though they had evidence saying that they weren't stopping the spread of the virus. Appreciate the call, Stilgar. Wish we had more time. Got a whole lot more to discuss as the show continues. More of your calls, more of your texts. Plus, are Seattle voters actually in favor of ramping up ICE enforcement? New poll says yes. We'll have all the details for you when we come back. You're listening to the Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI. Welcome to the Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI, your home for the politically homeless, streaming live at KVI.com and the KVI app. If you want to be part of the most dangerous show on the airwaves, call or text the Warrior Injury Law Studio line at 206-421-5757. That's 206-421-5757. Coming up this hour, HUD is now requiring proof of citizenship for Section 8 housing. I thought it was illegal for illegals to get Section 8 housing, so how many of them are actually living off our taxpayer dollars? But before we get to any of that, we go to the Warrior Injury Law Studio line, take a phone call from our frenemy, Bennett, the protester. Bennett, I got a beef to pick with you because Mike told me what you're calling about. If your work is protesting on Labor Day, you should take off from protesting.
Oh, you got me. Checkmate, Bennett. Oh, God. Well, there's never enough time to get to everything, you know. I mean, okay, so...
I'm just kidding with you. I know for you. Wait a second. I know for you it's more.
Congratulations, you played
there
yourself.
We go. I know for you it's more of a hobby and fun, right? This isn't what you do full time, right?
Yeah, I mean, it seems that way. So, well, the funny thing is that if you spend like 3% of your time on something, but that's mostly what you post about online, people think that's what you do with 90% of your time.
Oh, you mean like being a radio host?
Like, probably.
Yes.
Okay, since there is never enough time to get to anything, real quick, everybody, please do get vaccinated. Don't listen to RFK Jr. Don't listen to Stephen Miller. They don't know what the hell they're talking about. Please go ahead and get vaccinated. It doesn't cause autism. You know, Trump was one of the few people who said that vaccines cause autism and mostly got away with it because people were too busy responding to all the other dumb, terrible things that he said. But that's one of the things he said that too.
All right, Bennett, what did you actually call about today? I don't think it was to talk about vaccines and stuff, right?
I know, but there's always something comes up on him hold. It's like, don't get into that. I have to get into it.
Okay, get into what you called about, man. I want on-the-ground details. You were there at the park. It seemed peaceful. Did I miss anything?
Yes. So about Gasworks, I mean, so first things first to clarify, Sean Foyce, the guy who organized it, he's said things like the LGBTQ mafia is a cult bent on perverting and destroying the innocence of every child they can. So when you describe it as, you know, just Christians coming together to worship and why is Antifa protesting, I've heard you describe this one and the things that happened back in May, and I never hear you or anybody on the show like really accurately describe what these groups have said and why somebody might show up to protest against
Hang on a second. Hang on a second. Let me ask you this, Bennett. Let me ask you this. So when you had Macklemore show up in the Jewish neighborhood of Seward Park on the Sabbath to run an anti-Israel concert, you know me. You know my feelings on this. You've seen my feelings on this, right? We didn't show up with a whole bunch of people and start throwing urine at them. So why is it, we're just here to protest their ideas? That's not what it was back in May. We know what actually happened back in May. Regardless of what their ideas are, we still have the First Amendment, don't we?
Yeah, I mean, I'm saying they have the First Amendment right to gather. I'm saying that this is the reason why there were fewer arrests than this one. And because you had said, it was because this time the police did a great job of keeping the groups separate. That's actually pretty much the opposite of what happened. Because the one that they had this time, the actual perimeter of the event was open. And anybody, if they wanted to, could have gone around to the north end of the fence perimeter and just walked in. There were people watching to make sure nothing. But that was something that they weren't allowing people to do at the previous one. Like the one at City Hall, they were literally asking people in line, what church do you go to? What religion are you? And people, we were getting it on video. It's like, you guys, this is not legal, but Seattle PD was enforcing it. You can't get in unless the organizers say, and they are doing it based on religion, even though it's public property. But this one, there was a protest area on sort of like the hill between the parking lot and where the concert was. And that was not very close to where the fence was, but it was a place where people could hold protest signs and flags if they wanted to.
Let me clarify this. Wait, hang on. I just clarification question. I know Gasworks Park pretty well. I used to run events there. But here's my thing. Wouldn't you prefer this than what happened last time, where the left can make the points they want, the right can make the points they want, and everybody's freedom of speech and nobody's being assaulted or having urine thrown at them? Isn't this the better way to go, Bennett?
Well, I'm saying it went better this time, but it went better primarily because the police were not trying to keep protesters out of the field of vision of the event attendees. Now, you always have the First Amendment right to gather, but you don't have the First Amendment right for your field of vision to be completely free of people agreeing you. And that's what they were doing at the City Hall rally, where they said, okay, the entire space on 4th Avenue has to be fenced off, and if you want to protest, you have to go to some.
But hang on a second. They can legally say, this area you go into, we're going to have issues with you and we can trespass you and they can do that legally. We may not like it. It may not have been challenged in court, but right now on the books, they can actually do that. That's how they've arrested the street preachers sometimes when they get too close to an event. They say, dude, you can stay over here, but you can't come over here. They've done that for left events. They've done that for right events. You name it. They can do that this time. They can do that, right?
Well, I'm reading the language of the permit that they actually got for the Gasworks event, and the language in the permit actually says all parks are open to the public at all time. No exclusive use is allowed. Permittee may not close off, rope off, or partition any part of the park at any time, and that's in bold. Now, I think the reason you could have barricades around it in this time is they could say, all right, we'll have a place where protesters can be.
But wait a second. It wasn't the protesters who
that part.
Wait, hang on. It wasn't the protesters on either side who put up the barricades. That was the police. So blaming the right, the Christians for that, or blaming the protesters for that, the police put up those barricades. Nobody else did.
Okay, but I'm saying that like the permit that they got, it's not legal to actually close. You can have a barrier between.
So I'll say this one here.
Face each other,
I understand what you're saying, Bennett. I'm just going to say this for a second. Having worked with the city before, sometimes when the city issues you one of these replacement permits, they put on all the stuff they agree to or whatever else it is. I wouldn't put that on either side. They get benefit of the doubt for me on that one because I know when they issue these permits, it's bureaucracy nonsense. I wouldn't get hung up on that.
Okay. I'm just saying I think the most likely reason there were no arrests is because there was an area that protesters specifically had where they could hold signs and flags and actually be seen by the attendees instead of the previous ones where the police were just insulting them by saying, okay, you can go to this spot a block away where everybody can ignore you. And so I was actually able to get into the concert because they weren't controlling who could get in. So I have videos of the former youth pastor, rocker, whatever his history was, up on stage with people waving the pride flags and the trans flags behind him, which I thought was awesome. But that was the whole point. All people wanted was to make a statement that this is not what Seattle values.
So I'll say this, and then I'll give you the last word.
LGBTQ mafia is preying on.
Well, I'll say this, and then I'll give you the last word, Bennett. Then I got to run. Okay, I'll say this: is that regardless of what it is, this time it didn't look like anybody was throwing urine. This time it didn't look like anybody was assaulting anybody. And I think that's why it went better this time. You can't say, oh, because we didn't get to protest where we want to, we're going to throw urine at people and we're going to assault people. I didn't get to go to that concert in Seward Park. I wasn't even going to try to go to that concert in Seward Park. But that's the point here. When people show up and they go, okay, we're going to have our kazoos or whatever it was, then I think there's different expectations. When you show up expecting violence, which is what happened last time, one side wanted to fight last time. The other side wanted to do whatever they wanted to do, be it some message you agreed with or didn't disagree with. I'll give you the last word, then I got to run.
Okay. I mean, it's true that I think that what is the consequence of the way that they gave people an outlet to protest, the way that people didn't try to throw bottles for urine or get in fights this time was because they had a designated area where you could say what you want to counter the group. And to reiterate, people are not protesting this because they're Christians. You know, there are buildings in Seattle where every Sunday Christians gather and worship on a regular. I know it's not part of your upbringing, but they do exist. And if Antifa wanted to protest that, that's where they would be every Sunday. That's not what this is. It's because he's saying gay and trans people are preying on your children, and if you say that, people will show up to protest you when you're in town.
Well, I appreciate that you call to have these discussions, Bennett. I really do, and thank you for giving us the on-the-ground perspective of the event. Appreciate you being part of the show. You want to be part of the show, you give us a call or a text at 206-421-5757. That's 206-421-5757. I have a question, switching gears entirely. Do you think that the silent majority is out there in Seattle? Or do you think, nope, we're the silent minority in Seattle? Mike said in a couple segments ago, he said, oh, they walk among us, the people who wish death on the president and stuff. And we got a text, actually, that says, no, we walk among them from Paul. Paul says, no, we walk among them. They're the majority. And I'm not sure I agree, but I'm not sure I disagree. Let me tell you why. Como News had an article over the weekend about ICE ramping up operations in Seattle and Portland following Labor Day. Tom Homan said that ICE was going to be ramping up operations. Como News had a completely unscientific poll on here. They do this for clickbait, and like many news stations do. Look, I do this from time to time when I put up my polls. They just want to know the general pulse of what people are feeling. Well, you know what? It doesn't track where you're from. It doesn't track your demographic. It doesn't track if you even live in Seattle. Nothing like that. At the same time, Como News, I think, is the most balanced of our TV stations. I disagree with them sometimes. I agree with them sometimes. I think they are the most balanced out of the TV stations. I really do, and there's still some good reporting done over there. I think that more people on the right go to Como News, even more so than Fox 13, because Fox 13, I've noticed, has become like King 5. I really can't tell a difference between them anymore, because King 5 has gone a little bit more right, and Fox 13 has gone a little bit more left, and it's Spider-Man pointing at each other, going, oh, it's the same thing, it's the same picture, like in The Office. They have a poll up here, and the results of the poll are fascinating. It says, how do you feel about ICE increasing operations in the Seattle area? Approve, disapprove, and each case is different. Now, the activists love when they see these polls to go, you got to go vote for it. And notice I said activists, not left, not right. But usually the activists on both sides do this nonsense. But what's fascinating is what I see in this poll. It says 73% approve of ICE increasing operations. Only 25% disapprove. And 2% says each case is different. I don't think this is a scientific poll. I don't think this is something you can count on in any way, shape, or form. But I think this is illustrating that deporting illegal aliens who are criminals is an 80-20 issue. Look, I've got plenty of friends on the left. I live in Seattle. I would actually argue that most of my friends are on the left because I'm Jewish and I live in Seattle. Even though Orthodox Jews tend to be more conservative, I think over 90%, maybe even close to 100% of them. It wasn't 100%, but way over 90% voted for Donald Trump in the last election. So I will say is that I have never heard anybody on the left give me a good reason why you shouldn't be deporting illegal alien criminals. They always say something else. They always say something like, well, it's wrong what they're doing to the people in the fields. I go, I didn't say people in the fields, Democrat slave owner. I didn't say that. What I said was illegal alien criminals, rapists, murderers, child rapists, child murderers. And I have never heard a good reason why they shouldn't be deported. Not one. Here's an example of something that happened locally. John Batiste is the chief of the Washington State Patrol. When Bob Ferguson had his temper tantrum because he got the letter from Pam Bondi and saying you're a sanctuary jurisdiction and cut out your sanctuary state nonsense, or else we're cutting your government funding. When Bob Ferguson had his press conference about that, and I watched the whole stupid thing, you know who's standing behind him that whole time? John Batiste, the chief of the Washington State Patrol. This is what, a month, 2 months after Raul Benitez Santana was sentenced for killing Trooper Christopher Gadd. So you have the head of the Washington State Patrol standing behind the governor when he says we're going to keep doing the sanctuary state nonsense after the sanctuary state policies killed one of his troopers. Are you kidding me with this? Now, a lot of you are still mad about this. I've gotten emails from listeners. I've gotten emails from Washington State troopers. Ari, can you reach out to Washington State Patrol? Can you reach out to Washington State Patrol? Why was he up there? Why was he up there? Why was he up there? Now, if you watch the footage, there's something fascinating happening. He's up there, but he kind of seems to be trying to hide. I can't tell if he's trying to duck behind people, but he keeps disappearing and reappearing. I'm not sure what's going on there. But I reached out to Washington State Patrol. And I got this from Chris Loftus, who's one of their spokespeople. Ari, the loss of Trooper Christopher Gadd was a story of notable service by an individual who we will always honor and remember. It was also a story of criminal decision-making by another individual that led to an avoidable tragedy and preventable loss. And finally, it was a story of a true heartbreak for our state and those who loved and worked with our fallen trooper. The perpetrator has been convicted and sentenced and is currently in Department of Corrections custody. The chief attended the press event as a senior member of the governor's cabinet and in support of the bipartisan Keep Washington Working Act. In accordance with that law and department policy, when the perpetrator completes a sentence, DOC will notify ICE of his release. Thank you. You didn't answer my question. All you said was he's up there as a senior member of the governor's cabinet and supporting the Keep Washington Working Act. You mean the sanctuary policies that got one of his troopers killed? So I replied, thank you. A couple of follow-ups. Will the Department of Corrections notify ICE about other offenders as well? The act prohibits a lot of types of coordination with local law enforcement. Does the chief support that? By supporting the Keep Washington Working Act, isn't the chief supporting the policies that got Trooper Gadd killed? And by the way, I sat on this. Mike, you know I ask you, should I send something, should I not send? I sat there thinking it to myself. I sat there. Should I not? And eventually I click send. You know why? He decided to stand up there with the governor. He could have said, I'm sick that day. Could have done anything. And yet he is up there. I don't think this is an unfair question. Here was the response I got back. Ari, Chief Batiste cares deeply for the safety of every one of our people and both dutifully and even-handedly enforces the democratically enacted laws of our state. Please don't suggest anything to the contrary. Did I suggest anything to the contrary? I said, why is he up there for policies that got one of his troopers killed? I think that is a very fair question. As to the implementation of the Keep Washington Working Act, I would refer you to this article. It explains the current notification standards as well. I clicked the link to the article, and the article says these are all the things they're not going to be doing. I have gotten no answers out of this. None whatsoever. Basically, governor told him to do it, so he did it. And you know what? That's not leadership. For our Washington State troopers, our brave members of the Washington State troopers, I don't know how you get led by a guy like this. The Washington State Patrol, how do you get led by a guy like this who is up there right after the sentencing, an hour after we find out that Washington issued the CDL to the illegal alien trucker that killed 3 people in Florida? And this is, you guys are supposed to stand for the law. I'm not saying everybody has to be like a Lauren Culp type or a Keith Swank type and say, I'm not doing that because I don't like it. That's not what I'm saying. You don't have to stand up there at the press conference. You don't have to. There's been a lot of times where people have reached out to me and said, Ari, I'm a Republican, I'm running for office, or I'm a Republican, I want to come on your show, or we're in line on this, I want to come. No, because I don't agree with you. So I'm not giving you the weight of this platform. Yeah, do free speech, and sometimes I bring on people who disagree with me. We let Bennett on the show all the time, and he disagrees with us all the time. But if it's something that's completely contrary to my belief system, I am not obligated to give you a platform, and Batiste is not obligated to stand behind Bob Ferguson. You don't have to do it unless you're afraid of him. Are you afraid of him? Yeah, I'm asking you that, Chief. Are you afraid of him? Why did you stand behind him at that press conference? Why? You can't hide behind, this is bipartisan legislation. It got one of your troopers killed and you're head of the Washington State Patrol. How can you be up there with him while he's pushing to double down on the policies that got one of your troopers killed? Don't you stand for law and order? Here's one. Saw this one, got this press release from the Department of Justice. A Spokane-based U.S. Border Patrol and ICE agent arrested Eduardo Velasquez Rodriguez, a Mexican national with a violent criminal history that includes convictions for assault, rape, and child molestation. Velasquez Rodriguez is now in ICE custody and will be processed for removal from the United States. In a statement, ICE officials said Eduardo Roman Velasquez served a 15-month sentence for child sexual abuse and rape. Then this Mexican criminal alien was released into Washington due to sanctuary policies. Chief, can you defend that? Really, I'm asking, can you defend that? You're supposed to be the guy who represents law and order. If you support these policies, you might want to find a new line of work, because you shouldn't be the one who's the face of law and order in Washington for the Washington State Patrol. ICE blasted Washington sanctuary laws, saying sanctuary policies allow predators like him to remain in the U.S. after their release from prison in violation of U.S. immigration law enacted by Congress. So, Chief, how come Department of Corrections didn't say, hey, we're releasing this guy in? How come they didn't do that? Because of sanctuary state laws. You let a convicted child rapist, a convicted child molester, back into our communities after he was already in custody. Is that what you support? I don't think we're going to get an answer on that, would be my guess, because it's not defensible. It's just not. Lots more to discuss as the show continues, my friends. When we come back, Department of Housing and Urban Development is requiring proof of citizenship for Section 8 housing. My question is, didn't we have that already? What's been going on this whole time? You're listening to the Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KBI. I really don't understand how we constantly outrank Portland in terms of the homeless problem. Have you been to Portland recently, by the way? Here's how bad it is. According to the Post Millennial, the nonprofit organization Meals on Wheels has said it is done with downtown Portland. How bad do you have to be that Meals on Wheels won't even go to downtown Portland? That's their whole thing. We take it wherever they need it. We're going to help people out. And they go, nope, not there. No way. Not doing it. The organization provides food to seniors who are homebound. It has really recently shut down 2 facilities, including one in downtown Portland, because of crime and safety concerns. Meal on Wheels Chief Executive Officer Suzanne Washington told reporters, it's been a long time coming. One location was on Elm Court in downtown Portland, Oregon. The site had stopped offering dining for congregations of people after lockdown policies were implemented during COVID-19. The Elm Court location was never able to reopen for in-person dining after the policies allowed for restaurants to resume serving people in person. The location had instead turned into a hub for delivery drivers to pick up food to later get to seniors in their homes. However, that has had its own challenges with safety because of crime. The CEO said, I can't keep our staff safe and our volunteers safe because there's always something happening. We've been threatened with knives and fires have been set. It was time to close. Every day they're stepping over feces. There's needles and drug dealing and deaths, she added. She also noted that staff had to step over a body one time to get into a building. Okay, guys, can we have a real discussion about this? If you look at Washington, D.C., Washington, D.C. could have been the thing that proved everybody on the right wrong. If President Trump had gone in there with the National Guard and crime continued and murders continued and homicides and you name it, it all continued, guess what? I would have been wrong. I would have been wrong. The guy who's calling for more law and order. What we have now realized is that cities allowing this rampant chaos and taxpayer-funded drug addicts, this is by choice. This is by design. It doesn't have to be like this. In fact, it wasn't when I first moved here. Mike, fact check me on this. Let's go back about 21, 22 years. Seattle, lovely. Don't go on Aurora Avenue. Don't go to Pioneer Square during certain, or Pioneer Square was expect what you're going to get in Pioneer Square. Let's put it that way. Not don't go, but it's seedy. It's got a nice flavor if you want the seediness, right? That's where you go. Aurora Avenue has always been Aurora Avenue, as long as anybody I know can remember. Okay? I'm sure there were a few other little hot spots here and there, but it was a choice. We're going to let the crime be in these areas and everywhere else we're going to take care of. I have never seen a city say, we're going to let this stuff be near our tourist attractions. Even New York City for a while before de Blasio was smart enough to keep that stuff away from the tourist attractions. Even de Blasio was smart enough to do that until COVID. Keep that stuff away. And then he could let his freak flag fly and just say, okay, we're going to allow this stuff everywhere now that I can do whatever I want and I'm a king, just like Jay Inslee. Having a city go this far down the toilet is a choice, which they are enabling, which they are allowing. Why? Because they want that Homeless Inc. funding. They want the money they get from the feds for homelessness or drug addicts or affordable housing or whatever else it is. They want to be able to tax you for all that. This is a choice to get your tax money. Seattle Times had an article the other day about how most of the quote-unquote affordable housing is vacant. People are not using it. That's the Seattle Times. So what's the perspective they're coming from? Well, we advocated for this. Why aren't you using it? I'm coming from it. We're saying, I told you so. This isn't a homelessness issue. This is a drug issue. This is a crime issue. This is a mental health issue. And every time you say it's about affordable housing, we laugh at you because it is not about housing. How many of these people on the streets are actually homeless? How many people? Very few, I would guess. Meanwhile, the government says, hey, this grift is over. We're not paying for this stuff anymore. The Trump administration is directing public housing authorities across the U.S. to review their roles for illegal aliens. Housing and Urban Development Secretary Scott Turner announced on Friday. Turner said the authority had 30 days to complete an audit verifying whether tenants have citizenship or eligible immigration status. He warned that any program failing to comply could face scrutiny of its own federal funding. Quote, no longer will illegal aliens be able to leave citizenship boxes blank or take advantage of HUD-funded housing, riding the coattails of hardworking American citizens. You know, we have plenty of people who can't afford stuff. I remember when I was first starting out, I was making next to nothing. If it hadn't been for the help of my parents and my in-laws and a bunch of other people, I'd have a lot of hard time living when I did. But you know what? They helped me out. There was no affordable housing or benefits for me or anything like that. Why do we give them to everybody else? And I'm not saying there aren't people who are down on their luck. I'm not saying there aren't people who things have gone wrong for them. I'm not saying don't treat the addicts. Don't treat the mentally ill. But why do we assume this housing first model will work when for the last 16 to 18 years it has failed time and time and time again? Now what you're telling me is that we're importing people? You remember when Chris Rock was in Lethal Weapon 4 and he came up and he just did his rants, his usual rants right there in the middle of Lethal Weapon 4. And the opening scene is when the Riggs and Murtaugh get into the shootout with the human smugglers from China, and they're aboard the container ship, and they find all the illegal aliens. And then Chris Rock goes on this whole rant about how mad he is that, well, we don't got enough dead bodies in Los Angeles. Now we need to be importing victims. We don't have enough drug addicts, mentally ill, and homeless here in Washington, here in Seattle, that now we need to create them? Now we need to import them? You've got small towns across America who are going, well, those big cities are making all the money. Let's import the drug addicts, and then we can get a piece of that grift. This is a choice. This is a choice that Seattle, Portland, Los Angeles, New York, Chicago have made. They don't care about your safety. They care about the almighty dollar. And they care about how much they can tax you and how much they can squeeze out of the federal government, state government, county government, even city government. How much money they can squeeze out of it, because there's an added benefit. If you keep all these nonprofits on the gravy train, they're going to come and help you get reelected every single time with all their volunteers, because they know that if they don't get you reelected, somebody else may come along who's going to stop the party. Lots more to discuss as the show continues. A local beloved business is going to be shutting down because of government regulations and increased costs. We'll tell you all about it when we come back. You're listening to the Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI. For years, I have been using the services of the Reptile Man, the Reptile Zoo, everything reptile, to do events and programming for kids over at the synagogue that I volunteer for. My kids have enjoyed it for years. We've had birthday parties at my house, and now I hear they are closing up shop, and I was really, really disappointed because we love the Reptile Zoo. Joining us now to discuss in studio is Isaac Peterson from the Reptile Zoo. Good to see you again, man.
Good to see you, too.
So what's going on?
So we're just planning on shutting down just the facility itself. So the shows, that's, the Reptile Man and his daughter, they're going to continue doing shows. It's just the facility itself. That's the plan.
Gotcha. Why the facility itself?
It's just not viable anymore. It just has not been doing well since COVID happened, all the inflation. People just can't afford higher prices, and I can't do it any cheaper.
Gotcha.
So, yeah.
Is it new regulations, or is it just the costs are soaring too much to take care of the animals and everything else?
Yeah, the biggest thing is the cost going up and the people not being able to afford more. In terms of the regulation part of it, that is a significant part in terms of being able to transfer it to somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say somebody has the funds, because plenty of people have the funds to take over something like what we got going on, but the state doesn't want zoos that aren't AZA, that aren't associated with the AZA, to have venomous and have crocodilians. So that's really the most difficult part.
Okay, so this is clearly done by people who don't understand animals at all. I have a little experience in the zoo world. I had a relative who was big into the hunting world. And what they told me is everybody likes to think, oh, the zoos are such a wonderful place like the movie Madagascar. They are not. Those animals are not usually well taken care of. And in fact, they have a really interesting relationship with the hunters who want things for the walls and such of what they do with those animals when they've kind of outlived their usefulness. So just because you're a member of the AZA doesn't necessarily mean the animals are well cared for. Now, you're the second person who I've spoken to who runs a business like this, who's having these kind of problems. The other one was the wolf sanctuary.
Oh, yeah. I've heard about them.
Right. So they're trying to do
things about them.
That I got to say, between you and them, I love all these animal things we go to, and I'm a city boy, so I didn't know anything about this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But what we're talking about here is it just seems like the government is trying to get rid of all this stuff in favor of these zoos, which may not necessarily be the better option for these animals.
Yeah, I think AZA zoos are great. But for me, it's just I don't think that you should outlaw zoos like ours, private zoos like ours, just because we don't have the funds to be able to join. AZA's, it's a private club.
Yeah.
And you have to have a huge amount of resources to be able to join that club. So basically what you're doing is you're making sure that those small zoos just can't show up anymore, right? You just can't do. I can't afford it. I would love to be able to. We were trying to move our zoo. We bought a property in two properties in Sultan to move it out to build a brand new building and everything. Mm-hmm. But the cost to build just got way, way too high. But even if I go brand new with the brand new facility and everything, there's no way I could go AZA. And we're talking about tens of millions of dollars to be able to be accredited by an organization. It's not federally regulated. It's not regulated by the state. It's a private club, and I think they do great things, but I shouldn't have to join in order to keep my business open.
Right. I completely agree. And a lot of people do what you do. We're talking with Isaac Peterson, who's from the Reptile Zoo. What are you going to do with all the animals after this? I mean, you said you still have the shows, so I assume some of them are still going to be going out, but...
Oh, yeah. So the ones we have at the zoo, they're actually separate from the show ones.
Sure.
The Reptile Man has his own. My sister has her own animals. So we've got lots of options. The nice thing is we're not, financially destitute. We've got savings, so we can keep whatever we can't find good homes for. But I'm definitely not going to be, even if somebody has the money to buy something or to adopt something, if I don't think they're going to be safe or they're going to be well cared for, I'm just going to keep.
Gotcha.
So.
How many times have you been bitten by one of these guys?
No idea.
You just lost track.
I started this when I was 1 or 2. I'm 37 now, so it's just... Yeah, no idea.
I gotcha. Now, let's talk more about this AZA stuff. So basically, if you want to be a zoo, you have to pay into this private club so that you can be accredited. And this is the kind of thing where small guys like you can't afford it. That on top of the inflation. I mean, the food costs alone, I know what my food costs are. You're feeding a lot of little mouse there. Yeah. So I can only imagine what that is. Is the food the biggest issue, or is it more than
food
that?
is really big, but also labor. So about a year ago was the last time that we had was when I let go of my last zookeeper. And we was helping me take care of the animals. I didn't do it because I wanted to. I didn't want a bunch of extra work, but it was just the only way to keep the business afloat and not just bleed our savings. Mm-hmm. And so, labor's obviously been a big part of it. But, food inflation, everything else has been going up. I mean, cumulatively, because everyone's talking about, it's, inflation's going down, but cumulative inflation is 25 to 40%, depending on what service or product you're buying, right? So I haven't raised my price since COVID happened. So I've just had to cut, and that's the only way we've been able to keep things going.
I know when I was in the event rental industry, I was doing some math recently after COVID to see what I would have to charge in order to keep doing what I did back then. I would have to triple, if not quadruple, my prices. Yeah. So I can only imagine what you guys were doing. How many people did you employ before the pandemic?
Before the pandemic, or at the height of it, we had 4 full-time staff.
Gotcha.
So we're talking 40 hours a week, 4 people. Apart from myself, and this, I mean, I've also been a part the whole time, but since 2012. But yeah, we were able to afford full 4-time staff.
Is there anything that might get you to change your mind? Is there anything that could change?
Yeah, well, we've been getting a lot of great publicity lately, which has been super helpful. So if we can ride this wave, maybe we'll just get rid of that close date and just keep things going. And obviously, I have to convince my wife because the hours I got to work right now are pretty crazy. But yeah, if we can keep things going, that'd be the dream. But obviously, then we also worry about the state.
Right.
You know, if the state doesn't allow us to continue what we're doing, then it doesn't matter how much money I have. I mean, it's. Yeah.
So aside from the AZA membership that they want you guys to get, is there anything else they're doing to you guys?
No, that's the only thing. Obviously, during COVID, I mean, I hated having to work, government trying to force me to regulate people coming in and looking at, vaccination records, all that kind of stuff. I mean, it's not my job. Right. So obviously that was ridiculous. And then just being shut down for 6 months, burning through all of our savings during the COVID. Apart from that, and now it's basically just dealing with the inflation that's mostly caused by government spending.
Yeah, it seems like during the pandemic, a lot of people are watching Tiger King. And then they said, hey, you know what? We're going to crack down on all these private zoos because all these people are as nuts as these people we see on TV.
Yeah, that was a fun show, man. That was a lot of fun.
You and I have very different definitions of fun.
I thought it was fun, man. He was a fascinating guy, but obviously, it was pretty interesting.
Isaac Peterson from the Reptile Zoo, thank you so much for joining us today. I really do appreciate it. Well, my friends, when we come back, lots more to discuss, including that nudity park in Seattle. It is back in the headlines again. We will tell you about how the city's solutions failed. You're listening to the Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI. Welcome back to the Ari Hoffman Show. Just a reminder, coming up at 5:45, your chance to win fantabulous prizes, including a $50 Daniel's Broiler gift card, plus so much more. Yet another reason, always keep your radio tuned to 570 KVI. Left on your dial, always right on the issues. You can also stream us at KVI.com, download the KVI app, and, of course, subscribe on whatever your preferred podcast platform is. Well, Denny Blaine Park is back in the news again because apparently the nudists are not happy with the solution the city came up with. Let's refresh your memory for a second. Denny Blaine Park is where you have a bunch of people doing public nudity. That's not all. Public sexual acts, and there's violence at the park, and a lot of unsavory individuals. So after the story about this park in Seattle went viral, actually, you know what? Let's back up a second. We miss important context. The neighbors tried to solve it. The neighbors tried to solve it by saying, we're going to install a playground here. You remember that? That was a year ago, Mike. They said, we're going to install a playground here. And the LGBTQIA community said, no playgrounds. We want this. This is our sacred space. This is the ancient grounds of the LGBTQIA. You may not trespass on our sacred grounds. No children here at all. So no playground. By the way, if they had put in the playground, all this would not be allowed near the playground. That was the attempt at the time. So instead, what happened? These things got worse and worse and worse. And then Jonathan Cho put up some video where, oh, dear God, it's just graphic, beyond graphic. There are images that are burned into my mind from those videos. And the neighbors sued the city. And the city said, oh, we're not going to do anything about it. But then they were forced to do something about it by a judge. And also the city at some point said they were going to start towing cars and did start towing cars. Then they stopped towing cars. And once the city doesn't take an active interest in the place anymore, problems skyrocket again. So what happens? The park, the city, has a brilliant idea. The Parks Department has the best idea. What are they going to do? They're going to put up a fence. They're going to have the nakedness separated from the non-nakedness, except they do this stupidly. One, they do it cutting the park in half, but not side by side so everybody has beach access. They do it top and bottom, pun intended. So what they have is going to the beach. You have to be naked, or you can be naked down by the beach, but you can't go to the beach without going through the nakedness. If you would just put it right down the middle, as opposed to separating the top and the bottom, so the people who don't want to be naked just have the park area and not the beach area. Plus, they put up signs that say east of here, west of here. No, you fools. Should just been this side and that side. Well, apparently it's not working out too well. People have tried to tear down the fence. People have gotten mad about this whole situation. And I love this. Here we go. This is the new idea. Designating the park as a historic site for the LGBT community would allow us to gain protections. What? What does that even mean? Oh, it's a historically nudist. Well, I guess the Indians weren't wearing much when we showed up here, right? I mean, it's like Pocahontas, right? They're all wearing loincloths or whatever. No, it's the Pacific Northwest. It's cold here. I assume they were wearing stuff. But still, a historic site for the LGBT community? I'm sorry, how historic is T? How historic is any of this stuff? Give me a break. I think you should just shut it down. I think you should just do the parent thing. Okay, you guys keep fighting over the toy. Neither of you get the toy anymore. We are taking it away. This whole idea of, oh, I just want to be out there and let everything hang out. I don't understand why you don't do that in your backyard. I understand you want to go to the beach. I understand you want to sunbathe. It's like, there's these people who are neighbors of mine who were convinced that a second-story addition, that we were all going to be looking into their hot tub all the time, and they like to be naked in their hot tub. You know, there's so many trees blocking it. I had no idea they even had a hot tub. And even when I got up there, I had no idea they even had a hot tub. Couldn't even see it. This obsession with nakedness, I just don't get it. Maybe I'm a bit of a prude that way. I want to know what you think. Should we just close the thing down? Or maybe we should just say we have public decency laws. This is not a legal nude beach. That's not what it is. We're not Europe. That's not what it is at all. Historically, LGBTQIA. See, when you throw out stuff like that, the mayor then gets involved. Watch. Bruce Harrell's going to come out and, oh, wait, didn't mean that pun. Bruce Harrell's going to have a press conference, and he's going to say something. We need to protect the historical LGBTQIA nude beach at Denny Blaine Park just because he's desperate to win an election. Then, you know what they're going to do? They're going to dedicate the park in honor of some LGBTQIA hero who's dead. So now it won't be Denny Blaine anymore. By the way, you think Denny liked that this is all named after him? From everything I know about Denny, that's probably a no. So we're going to come out and name it, I don't know, let's just say Harvey Milk, even though he's not from this area. Let's just say, okay, well, they took away the Navy ship. Now we're going to name the park after him. Oh, my God. Now it's a hate crime that you did something in this park. Now we're going to call it a hate crime. Just watch. This is also predictable. We know how this is going to end. Meanwhile, I love the mayor's response to all this. In response to the court's ruling on a preliminary injunction, the city submitted a plan to abate nuisance activities. Stop. Is anybody enforcing any of this? If nobody's enforcing it, your plan is garbage. Your plan is complete garbage. The city has consistently said we will not tolerate lewd and illegal activities at the park. And then they list them. This is a graphic letter. This is the most graphic letter I have ever seen out of the mayor's office. Well, we believe this plan balances the historical... I called it. I didn't even read this beforehand. The historical use of the park, including by the LGBTQIA plus community, while also addressing unwanted and illegal behaviors that impact both park users and the surrounding community. Nope. Park rangers have been on site. A ranger's not going to like this, Yogi. Park rangers have been on site. Are you kidding me? The vast majority of park users have been in compliance with the park rules, and rangers have not received reports for lewd conduct. But for the few park attendees not in compliance, by being outside the clothing optional area, park rangers have informed them of park rules and asked them to move to the appropriate area. Our city is a joke. Our city is an absolute joke. Oh, my God. What comes next? Lots more to discuss as the show continues, my friends. When we come back, final hour free-for-all, your calls, your texts, your stories. Plus, also, a conference was held in Detroit where they said all the quiet parts allowed about how they want to take down America. And Rashida Tlaib was the headliner. Tell you all about it when we come back. You'll listen to the Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KBI. Welcome to the Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI, your home for the politically homeless, streaming live at KVI.com and the KVI app. If you want to be part of the most dangerous show on the airwaves, call or text the Warrior Injury Law Studio line at 206-421-5757. That's 206-421-5757. Coming up at 5:45. Your chance to win fantabulous prizes, including a $50 Daniels Broiler gift card, plus so much more. But before we get to any of that, since October 7th, in fact, long since before October 7th, I've been telling you that what the Hamas terrorists and other radical Islamic fascist terrorists want is the end of America. They said the quiet part out loud this weekend. There's been this real switch where the people who support Hamas have recently been more brazen in the things they have said because they know the media will cover for them. The Guardian, which is a far-left paper out of the UK, which has already been taken over by this kind of insanity, led the charge for a bunch of outlets to declare that Israel is killing journalists and we're not going to cover press conferences from Israel anymore because they're killing journalists. And they featured all these journalists. Without double-checking their names, I just went down the list. I started with A, Abdul al-Jamal. Do you know who that is? That's two A's right there. Abdul al-Jamal, right at the top of the list. That is the guy who was holding Israeli hostages in his house in Gaza. That is the guy who was working for Al Jazeera and the Palestine Chronicle right here in Washington, a 501c3 based here in Washington. And he was killed when the IDF raided his home to rescue 3 Israeli hostages and another one across the street. Journalist, my you-know-what. Going down that list, I recognized 15 names without checking. And I could tell you exactly what each one of them did. I am sure if I went through every single name on that list, I would find a whole lot more. So once again, you've got another narrative that is debunkable in 10 seconds. But you had this pro-Hamas conference in Detroit, Michigan over the weekend. This conference where it was basically, here's how we bring down America. They were done talking about Israel. Oh, they talked about Israel plenty. We got to give credit to our friend Stu Studio, who's over on social media as Stu Studio. I like that. It's very funny. Yes. Mike's laughing. He finally got the joke. You have to say it out loud, right? We featured his stuff all the time. His stuff went viral over the weekend because he sat there for 40 hours clipping everything these guys said. This is what one of the people wrapped in a keffiyeh said over the weekend.
We have to destroy the idea of America in our heads, in our neighbors' heads, in our comrades' heads, in everybody's heads in this country. We have to work towards problematizing and getting away from the normalization of the violence of the military-industrial complex.
Hang on a second. I don't care about the military-industrial complex or whatever came after that. We have to destroy the idea of America, and everybody started cheering on that one. What do you think is the idea of America? Oh, really? Give us a call or a text, 206-421-5757. Let freedom ring. Freedom to do this, freedom to do that. That's the idea of America. Whether or not we're holding true to those principles may determine on your political leanings at any given time. But that is the idea of America. When you see the American flag, to so many people in the world who don't have those freedoms, they look at that flag and they see freedom. They see prosperity. They see a sign of better things. Why would anybody want to destroy that? America has been the greatest force for good in the history of humanity. The greatest force for good. Why would you want to destroy that? Here's something else. If you don't like this country so much, the door's right there. There are airports in Michigan. You guys live next to a giant lake, or so I'm told. I've seen it myself. If you don't like it, boat, plane, I don't care. Whatever it is. Borrow some paraglider, hang glider things, some power hang gliders from your buddies in Hamas. There are plenty of ways you can leave the country. It's not about being here, not being here. It's about destroying America because they know that America stands for freedom. It's amazing to me that this whole conference seemed to be about destroying Israel, destroying America, and promoting communism, which isn't freedom for anybody. Why are people always trying to escape Cuba? What, because it's so free down there? Why are they taking 57 Chevys and turning them into boats to try and get over here? When people like countries, you don't usually see them fleeing them. You see a lot of people fleeing the United States who aren't celebrities from Hollywood? No. People don't flee the United States. People come here and try to want to remake it into the third world garbage dumps that they came from. Oh, they had some other brilliant things they said from the floor of this thing. Here's one of the other speakers this weekend.
We wanted to globalize the Intifada, to expose to the world that Israel's policies have nothing to do with security, that Israel tries to tell the world, and that our government also regurgitates, gaslighting us. We thought that if we could get this message out, the world would wake up and not allow Israel to do this, to do what it's doing. And I must admit, that was a bit of naivete on our part. But we have and we will continue to globalize the Intifada.
Okay, are we going to do this again? Really? Are we really going to do this again? Do you need another instruction manual on this whole thing? They're saying the quiet part out loud. The masks are fully off. Do you know what happened during the 2000 Intifada? That's the year 2000, right after my gap year in Israel. You know what happened? Bombers would walk into pizza places. There was this place that I used to go to. It was Sbarro's in Israel. It was kosher. Remember the pizza place Sbarro's? Did you have them on the West Coast, Mike? Yeah, you had them out here. I like Sbarro's. I liked it a lot. I liked it better than Pizza Hut and all those other places. I used to eat there almost every single Friday. That's where I would go. It was surreal seeing that place detonated by a homicide bomber, a place that I used to go to all the time just a few months after I left Israel after my gap here. Terrorists walking onto buses, and they don't care who they kill. In Israel, you have Jews, Christians, and Arabs living side by side. Jews, Christians, and Muslims living side by side, and Armenians, and plenty of other religions as well. They killed over 1,000 people doing that. When you say globalize the Intifada, is that what you want? Because, you know, we had that already multiple times in this country. There were 2 buildings in Manhattan that were taken down shortly after the bombing I'm telling you about by people who want to globalize the Intifada. An Intifada means an armed uprising. That's what it really means. And that's what they are calling for. That's what the theme was of this thing. Here's a professor from UCLA who was speaking this weekend at this thing.
We have shut down bridges, flooded streets, organized die-ins and sit-ins, rallies, marches, and pickets, fundraisers and conferences, doubled down on campaigns for boycott, divestment, and sanctions, sustained the popular demand for an immediate arms embargo, confronted tech, logistics, media, and other private industries colluding in genocide, and our young people launched a student uprising of historic proportions.
You mean the student uprising that targeted Jews, Christians, anybody who disagreed with them in their own schools, including right here in Washington? In places like Issaquah, Redmond, Seattle, you name it, all over the place. A student uprising? They're literally brainwashing these kids to carry out the will of destroying America. That's literally what they are doing. They are brainwashing your kids in these schools, and these useful idiot teachers don't even realize what they're caught up in. They think they're freeing Palestine. That's not what they're doing. They're literally trying to destroy America. How many times do we have to have the same conversation? Israel to them, little Satan. Big Satan is America. They say it out loud. There's this very powerful documentary I saw not too long ago called October Hate. It's supposed to be October 8. There's a little 8 symbol. And what it's about is how after the October 7th massacre, you would think there'd be a lot of worldwide sympathy for Jews. That's not what happened. College campuses immediately started supporting Hamas. In fact, some of these social media accounts, Students for Justice in Palestine and a bunch of the other ones that haven't been active in years, went active minutes before the massacre, almost like they knew was coming. The violence we have seen on college campuses, including right here at WSU, University of Washington, Seattle University, the stuff we have seen on these campuses defies belief. There is one country in the Middle East that has a pride parade. One. That's Israel. There is one country in the Middle East where people from the LGBTQIA community have full rights. That's Israel. Think about the rights that those communities have here in the United States. Unprecedented. Right here in Seattle. And yet the people who claim to be from that community are out there marching with the people who want to see them dead. It's insane. It's absolutely insane. This is how societies fall. How did Rome fall? From within. They were attacked plenty of times from within. Here's somebody who was part of the protests at Columbia. Here's what he said.
And so we wholeheartedly support YDSA's interest and commitment to the student strike, especially in the spring semester. We're looking forward to mobilizing our over 400 now SJP chapters in service of this goal as well, and also finding new and creative ways to exert the same type of mass power and labor power on campus that puts a knife to the throat of our boards of trustees, if you will.
I'm sorry, what? What did you just say? That doesn't sound like a hint at anything. That sounds pretty direct. That kid should be expelled immediately. That is a threat of violence. That's what that is. Speaking of threats of violence, here's a crazy one for you. This is one of the leaders of the Palestinian Youth Movement, which is actually linked to multiple terrorist organizations. She's talking about how to stop the F-35 from flying. Now, while you listen to this, those of you who live in Renton, those of you who live in Seattle, who see them building those Boeing airplanes all the time, I want you to think about how actually viable her plan is. Listen to this craziness.
Is that 70% of the cost of the F-35 program actually comes from the supply chain. 70% of this $2 trillion that goes into the supply chain is literally because they need to transport the different components of the F-35 to different locations to assemble them. And what's really important for us to know is that the F-35 supply chain functions off of this just-in-time logistics process. It's called this, it's an inventory management system, and it's called just-in-time.
Now, hang on a second here. Anybody here who's ever been to Renton? You see those giant fuselages of the Boeing planes going by on the trains. What she's talking about is attempting to stop that kind of stuff. Those are passenger jets. How many times have activists tried to stop the BNSF railroads around here? So many times. It's been, 3 or 4 dozen? And that there's been multiple convictions about it because they didn't like the oil or anything else? Now imagine they do that in Renton. You know, those trains go right past our friends over at Renton, Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, Ram. You can see them right there. You can see them real easy if you're in that part of Renton. You can see them right there. These lunatics are talking about attacking the supply chain, attacking our industry, attacking our businesses because they want to stop a fighter jet. What she's talking about by that supply chain and in time is that they get stuff on a basically on-demand basis. And if they don't have the parts on demand when they need them, then you've disrupted the supply chain. She went on for minutes talking about how to take down the F-35 supply chain. What if they attack a microchip company that makes microchips for multiple electronic devices? Then we've got problems, and they've done stuff like this before. Here's something else. Did you hear that pause in the middle of when she was talking? That wasn't for water. That wasn't for air. That wasn't to collect her thoughts. She's reading off a script. I don't think she's smart enough to come up with this on her own. Somebody is prompting them to take down our military assets. How much clearer can it be? By the way, I am not cherry-picking quotes. There weren't times they're all singing Kumbaya at this thing. Stu Studio had over 40 hours of this stuff. Over 40 hours. Do you know who their keynote speaker was? Representative Rashida Tlaib. Here's what she said.
Every genocide enabler, look at this room, motherfuckers. We ain't going anywhere.
Yeah, that goes on for a while. She talked about how now you have Palestinians in Congress and Palestinians in every corner of this country. Let me put this to you. What has Palestinian society contributed to the world aside from homicide bomb vests and airline security because they invented the airline hijacking? Really? What have they contributed? And now they're talking about, they had an entire conference talking about bringing down America. Not bringing down Israel. Sure, that was mentioned. About bringing down America through communism, through socialism, through terrorism. You name the ism, they used it. That is what they are talking about. You know, some people may say, restrict what they say, get rid of them. My friends, freedom of speech is a really, really great thing because now we all see it. This material went viral over the weekend. If you forgot what we're up against, this is what we're up against. It's not like we haven't faced Islamic terrorism in the U.S. before. Unfortunately, we've faced it far too many times. But sometimes you need a reminder of what they're really about. They are literally telegraphing, telling you what they want to do here in America. It's insane. It's absolutely insane. And the fact that there are kids on college campuses who are shilling for all of this. Kids here in Seattle. How many times did they block the streets, block I-5, block the University Place Bridge, block all this stuff on behalf of a terrorist organization? They're literally telling you what they want to do. And you have people here who are supporting them. And it's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. What, you think all of a sudden you're going to have freedom? You're going to have free rights under this socialist, communist utopia? Of course not. I want to know if all this stuff gets enacted, how much longer you think America has. Let me tell you something. Mamdani, he's the tip of the iceberg. If Mamdani wins, they are going to run a slate of people just like Mamdani across the entire U.S. Some of them will lose. Some of them will win. And then you have little Mamdaniites running the stuff across the country. But as we know in Seattle, we've had people like Sawant before. And I'm sure New York has their own version, like de Blasio. Of course, he's endorsing Mamdani. Why? Because de Blasio was pushing all the socialist, communist nonsense during COVID. It's not the Mamdani effect. Mamdani is the result of all of this stuff. You get a Mamdani, likely becoming the next mayor of New York less than 25 years after 9/11. Because the enemy has found a new way to infiltrate our country. It's by using our own freedoms against us. And that's exactly what they are doing. Lots more to discuss as the show continues, my friends. When we come back, Seattle Public School enrollment is down. That's probably a good thing given what they're being taught. But before we get into the details of the who, what, when, where, how, and why, Todd Herman's Daily Thoughtcast, right now on The Ari Hoffman Show. I love this headline here from Seattle Public Schools. Seattle schools face enrollment decline, future budget shortfalls as students return. Well, what's funny is how many students are actually returning. If you're having enrollment decline, a lot of those kids, a lot of their parents have said, no more of this nonsense. They have a poll up at Como News right now. What do you think is impacting Seattle Public Schools budget the most? Your choices are declining enrollment, overspending, inflation, inadequate state federal funding. With over 65% of the vote, it's overspending, which is 100% correct. If you have less kids coming, that means less federal funding. It means less state funding, even if you get bailed out by the Washington state legislature, which they did this year. Now, I know their superintendent is having some kind of press conference today, but their press conference today, let's be real about this. What are they going to do? Blame Trump? Blame taxes? Blame inflation? Blame tariffs? What are they going to blame? They have nobody but themselves to blame. During COVID, we all saw what they were actually teaching. And many people said no more of this, but also during COVID, they were getting tons of government money for air scrubbers and filters and you name it. And instead of realizing this is a one-time expense, what do? They say we're going to blow this money on all the DEI insanity and whatever other craziness they came up with. So then when the money ended, because COVID ended, which actually shows you they thought it would never end, they could keep this going as long as they wanted, they said, oh no, what are we going to do? And they went to the Washington state legislature, and the Washington state legislature said, yeah, this is a real problem. We really need to bail them out. That's what we need to do. Guys, this is their own faults. They negotiate contracts they can't afford with teachers who are brainwashing kids, not educating kids, and there's a difference. Next year, when Turd Ferguson's law goes into effect about how these striking workers can get unemployment insurance while they're striking, guaranteed, Seattle Public Schools, boom, on strike. Every school district on strike. Because now they get paid. They get paid while they are striking with your taxpayer dollars, with the money that's meant to be your unemployment insurance. That's going to go to striking workers, to these teachers that make over six figures for 9 months worth of work out of the year, and they're not even doing a good job. Given the numbers, you see how many of these kids can't read at grade level, can't write at grade level, can't do math at grade level, can't do science at grade level. I know there's some good teachers out there, but I think they're few and far between anymore, because now we don't hear so much from the teachers. A lot of teachers have told me they've retired or they're getting out of here. They just go, yeah, you're right. And the ones that do fight with me over this and say, Ari, there's a lot of us, I go, then why aren't you showing up to the meetings? Why aren't you voting against all this insanity? I don't think there's as many left as you guys think there are. Do I know there's good teachers? Sure, I know some of them. But I also had a friend who had a panic button under her desk because of the violence in her classroom in Seattle Public Schools. It's crazy to me that anybody would trust the state to raise their child. Do you want a state-educated child? Do you want a state-produced child? Do you want a child whose education is run by the city of Seattle? You don't trust them to fill potholes. Why would you trust them with your most valuable commodity? It makes no sense at all. And how much stuff are they hiding from us? Well, it took them a year to investigate teachers like Ian Golash, who are actively supporting terrorism in the classrooms. Took them a year. We did all the investigating for them. We had it a day after we found out who this guy was. Took him a year to investigate, and this guy's still on the payroll because he's appealing his dismissal after not denying the October 7th atrocities and all the other stuff, taking kids to BLM rallies and riots. So how much do we not know about? We've been following what's going on in the St. Helens School District. Now, it's in Oregon, but some kids from southern Washington go across the border and go to the St. Helens School District. Scandal after scandal after scandal was covered over by the school district. KATU, which is their affiliate down there that's like Como News, had a full report on how bad this has gotten. Give a listen to the story.
It makes me feel incredibly frustrated. It makes me feel like they're not taking this seriously at all.
The reports confirm our greatest fears.
Tonight, St. Helens School District parents weighing in on a report showing that the school district mishandled allegations of sexual abuse made by students for years. Thanks for joining us. I'm Tanvi Verma. Let's get right to the story that's been making national headlines for almost a year. From teachers arrested for sexually abusing students students to accusations that student complaints fell on deaf ears. It turns out there's even more allegations of failures on the part of the district. In fact, the report, which was conducted by a third party, shows that there were allegations against choir teacher Eric Stearns and former math teacher Mark Collins since 2019, including allegations that Stearns was hitting girls on their bottoms during cheer practice. Yet there was no investigation initiated by the high school. There were also allegations that Collins rubbed students' lower backs up and down close to their bottoms. Although this was reported to Principal Katie Wagner, she ruled that there was no sexual intent behind it. So to get to the heart of the story, we spoke to one parent.
Whoa, 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 whoa. Touching their bottoms, rubbing their back close to their bottoms, no sexual intent behind it? Give me a break. If you believe that, I got 2 bridges running over Lake Washington I'm happy to sell you. And if you act now, I will throw in an electric ferry that isn't running. You can fix it up yourself. You can convert it back to electric diesel.
Erin, who says her daughter was one of Stearns' students.
It's very emotional. It's hard. We send our kids off every day, trusting in the people that nurture and teach our children that they are protected. I believe it's their given right to be able to earn an education in a safe, loving environment.
The report also goes on to say that in 2024, 8 staff members received a tip about alleged sexual misconduct by Stearns, yet only 1 staff member contacted law enforcement about the tip. The tipster wrote that these concerns had been brought to Principal Wagner, who he says did not take the appropriate next steps. None of this comes as a surprise to one parent whose student just graduated this year.
I mean, I already just knew it to be true. So to see it written in paper and like put in front of me, like especially after how we being not me, but someone else forced like them to release the report, like it didn't feel great. It just kind of felt like nothing.
The report also shows gaps in annual staff training. For example, staff members had to complete a course on responding to child abuse and neglect, and almost 70% of staff completed the entire course in less than 5 minutes, even though the course should have taken an average person about 30 minutes to complete.
Stop. You don't need a course to tell you the difference between right and wrong. If you know that a fellow teacher in your school, a fellow staff member in your school, or you hear that this is happening, you should report it immediately. That's the job of a mandated reporter. How do you not know that? That's right and wrong. It's happening to kids. They don't care about your kids. They care about protecting each other, which is why the Washington State Legislature tried to make it so that they didn't have to inform you if something happened to your kid for more than 48 hours so they can get their ducks in a row. They do not care about your kids. They do not deserve your kids. You don't want the government running anything else. Why do you want them educating your children to hate the very ideals they grew up with in your house? But worse than that, that they may become the victim of a predator in these schools that they allow into these schools and that they conceal in these schools because their buddies in the union are more important than your kids. Lots more to discuss as the show continues. When we come back, holy cow, some insane crime is happening around here. And yet, I don't see the mainstream media reporting on a lot of it. We'll tell you some of these crime stories you haven't heard, and you'll figure out why you haven't heard them when we come back. You're listening to the Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI. Welcome back to the Ari Hoffman Show. Just a reminder, coming up at 5:45, your chance to win fantabulous prizes, including a $50 Daniel's Broiler gift card, plus so much more. Yeah, another reason, always keep your radio tuned to 570 KVI, left on your dial, always right on the issues. You can also stream us at KVI.com, download the KVI app, and, of course, subscribe on whatever your preferred podcast platform is. Got some good texts over here during the breaks. This one from L. Darthbo. He's talking about how when we exposed all that stuff that was being taught at that conference in Detroit, Ari, my wife, is British, and from her contacts in the old country, she tells me that there is a multitude of cities in the UK that now have Muslim mayors. Ties in with what you have been talking about. It all scares me. What I was talking about was the fact that if Mamdani wins, you're going to see a lot of copycats just like him running on the same messaging because they think that's the key to success. In fact, you've already seen them. In fact, a lot of you, Mamdani's the result, as I said. He's not having the effect. He's the result of the Sawants of the world, of the de Blasios of the world. He's making all these promises he can't keep, programs that have failed. Multiple. De Blasio was on Morning Joe today. De Blasio was on Morning Joe. That's a name I haven't heard in a long time. De Blasio was there. And when he got called out on, hey, this program for free buses failed, he goes, oh, there's plenty of places when it worked. And when they said, name one, he's like, I'll get you a list. I'll get you a list. That's a I don't know. Of course it doesn't work because nothing in life is free. This one here from the 206, weird how Seattle's values is in conflict with Christianity, but not with globalizing the intifada. Exactly right. Absolutely insane. Speaking of Seattle, by the way, saw this from the police scanner over on Oakhurst Place. Seattle Police Department just tased a naked male in a person's backyard. Multiple callers said he had been wandering the neighborhood, throwing items at windows and trying to get into houses. Now, this neighborhood I know pretty well because it's near my house. This is my neighborhood. And what's crazy about this is I know where the homeless are in my neighborhood. They're down where Seafair is usually. That's where they hang out. A few areas in Leschi and Mount Baker. They're not usually in my neighborhood. So is this one of our taxpayer-funded drug addicts who wandered a little away from his RV? This is absolutely bonkers. But it's just a normal day in Seattle. Yep, naked dude in the backyard, throwing things at people's houses. Just another day in Seattle. See, that's the problem. People ask me all the time, Ari, is it really as bad as you say? And I say this all the time. I've told you this before. What I say is the problem with Seattle is you never know where the next problem is going to be. In New York, you know you don't go here, you don't go there. Well, actually, I haven't lived in New York in a long time. I shouldn't talk about this because as I hear from a lot of my friends, it's getting just as bad. It used to be in Los Angeles. You don't go here, you don't go there. But now it's becoming everywhere. This is what is happening. I remember one time, my synagogue is kind of an enclosed property, so you don't have a lot of problems on the synagogue property itself. Out front, you got some issues. But what happened was one time people called me and they go, Ari, there's some dude sleeping on the front of the synagogue, just sleeping there. Some homeless guy wandered away. There's no services in our area. There's no methadone clinics in our area. There's no homeless shelters in our area. Yet they just go looking for resources. Where's the house we can burgle? Where can we stand on the side of the freeway and get money? It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. That's not the only thing from the police scanner. Ready for this one? This one, 2nd Avenue Southwest and Olson Place Southwest. Caller found their friend deceased in a tent in the park. Caller found their friend deceased in a tent. I don't think they were just camping in the park because, oh, let's have a sleepover tonight. So what you're saying is one of our unsheltered neighbors, one of our taxpayer-funded drug addicts, overdosed in a tent, most likely. And then somebody else called him. Here's a question I have. How do they have a phone? Where do they get a phone from? Do they run to the nearest payphone? There's no payphones around. They're using their city paid for cell phones. You know what? I should really do a PDR. I should really do a public disclosure request and find out how many cell phones we're buying for the taxpayer-funded drug addicts. Now, this was confirmed by the Seattle Fire Department. They showed up, tried to Narcan the person, tried to CPR the person. Or maybe by then they just go, yeah, this is a lost cause. No way. This is what they are enabling. This is what they are enabling on the streets of Seattle. Here's another one for you. This one made headlines last week. So this one from Como News. King County has agreed to pay $21.5 million to settle the lawsuit of a woman who was mauled by dogs while out jogging in her neighborhood in an unincorporated area of Auburn in 2022. This woman, who was 38 at the time, was out for a jog on 45th Place South on February 22nd, 2022, when two dogs ran out from a home and started attacking her. Hearing her screams, neighbors ran out and tried to help, but they were unable to stop the attack. She suffered serious injuries to her head, legs, and torso and arms with several broken bones. The lawsuit said the dogs dragged her across the street before King County Sheriff's Office deputies arrived. A deputy eventually shot and killed one of the two dogs. A second dog ran, but was later captured by animal control. Now, as soon as I heard this story, I said, is this somebody whose dogs just went berserk? Or is this one of our unsheltered neighbors? The house these dogs came out of looks like a hoarder house, which was inhabited by squatters. Como News learned from neighbors they had been complaining for some time about squatters trashing dogs at the house where the dogs lived. But the county failed to do enough to keep the neighbors safe. Sound like they didn't do anything at all. The attorneys confirmed that concerned neighbors had called to report the issues with the property since at least 2018. 4 years. Neighbors made over 75 calls to the King County Sheriff's Office, King County Regional Animal Care Services, King County Code Enforcement, and other King County departments asking the county to address the hazards on the property, including aggressive dogs, criminal activity, and accumulation of odorous garbage and debris. They were squatting there for 4 years. 4 years. King County executive issued a statement. Our thoughts are with the victim. Oh, sure. You guys didn't want to do anything at the time. Now it's going to cost you $21.5 million of our taxpayer money. Or is insurance going to pay for it? And then your insurance rates go up and we have to pay for it. Because you guys are incompetent buffoons who give drug addicts, mentally ill, and squatters the run of the city and not the people who actually pay your salaries. Only good news to wrap up the show. Your good news giveaway, your good news headlines, your chance to win a $50 Daniel's Broiler gift card, plus so much more. You're listening to the Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI. It is time to feel good as we wrap up another amazing episode of the Ari Hoffman Show right here on Talk Radio 570 KVI. And before we get to our good news giveaway, got some good news headlines for you. Popular autonomous vehicle company Waymo is expanding its operations to the broader Seattle metropolitan area, according to Como News, allowing residents and visitors the opportunity to hitch a ride with a driverless vehicle. I saw these things being tested here. I recognize them immediately. Every time I go down for the Turning Point USA conference in Phoenix, I always see these things on the street. And I said, oh no, any minute now we're going to see these things in Seattle. And then when I saw that the rioters in California were lighting these on fire, I said, I wonder if they're going to send those things up here, because remember they pulled them all out of Los Angeles so the rioters wouldn't be lighting them on fire anymore? Yeah, let's send them to Seattle, where they'll be a lot safer. They don't have rioting in Seattle. They don't have crazy people up in Seattle, so they're bringing them here. Interesting move. I like that they say the broader Seattle metropolitan area. Does that mean they're not going to go downtown? Does that mean we'll keep them over on the east side? That's where we're going to keep them. The company said it has spent years getting to know the area to allow its vehicles to operate safely in uniquely wet Pacific Northwest winters. Do these things know how to stop? Anti-lock brakes going to work well? Do they know how to deal with the Seattle driving here? I mean, residents who've lived here for 20 years don't know how to drive in the rain around here. Oh, no, the rains are coming. That means everybody's going to forget how to drive again. So the Waymos are going to be out here, and they've been getting to know the area. Hang on a second. The robots have been getting to know the area. This is it. This is how we go. The robo-cars. You get in the robo-car, and it goes to some place you didn't tell you. And really what it is, it's those places in that Terminator Salvation movie where they took all the members of the Resistance, like Kyle Reese. Oh my God, I see how this is happening already. Death by Waymo. That's Google. Google is really Skynet. This is how we go. This is how we end. It's going to be by the cars. It's going to be by the robo-servers. This is what's going to happen. The service currently operates in Austin, Phoenix, San Francisco, Atlanta, and Los Angeles. I don't think they're operating in Los Angeles right now after what's happening during those riots. Yes, I'd like to order a Waymo to light on fire, please. Waymo said it also plans to expand to Denver, Miami, and Washington, D.C. When Waymo first launched, it used safety drivers to mitigate potential problems the vehicle faced. The company began to operate completely driverless in 2020, and now passengers using the rideshare will enter an empty cabin. Waymo wrote in a blog post on its website, as we work to create a path forward for autonomous operations, we're deepening our relationship with the local community. Would you get in a driverless car? Would you get into one of these things? I don't like taking an Uber. I definitely don't want some robot taking me places. Oh, is that bigoted? Are we going to have that one day? We're going to have robot rights activists? Is that what's going to be? They're slaves. You made them slaves. Is that what's going to be? Just watch. Just watch. I'm convinced if we had a zombie apocalypse, there would be zombie rights activists in our area. Would you get in a driverless car? Give us a text at 206-421-5757. That's 206-421-5757. Meanwhile, in a galaxy pretty close to home and not so far, far away, Darth Vader's lightsaber can be yours this week. According to Como News, the iconic Star Wars weapon, which was used by actor David Prowse in his stunt double Bob Anderson, the now famous fight scene in The Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi, is going on sale later this week with PropStore.com. The COO of PropStore told TMZ, we got a phone call from a gentleman who said, hey, I have one of the original lightsaber props. They have very few lightsabers, but this one's very special, is that it's the one that Darth Vader used to duel Luke Skywalker. $1 million is the low end of the estimate. The estimate is $1 to $3 million. We don't really know what it'll sell for. That's the beauty of the auction process. The final price is determined by the bidders. It depends on who steps in and bids, and ultimately how hard they want it for battle or duel or piece of the day. Well, he noted that the winning bidder could have fun recreating Star Wars scenes with the lightsaber. He thinks it's more likely the lot will be viewed as artwork that will go on display. He said, I guess if you want to, you could reenact the movie, but I think people will put it on display. People view these things like artwork. It's not unlike buying a painting. They want to create a great piece to go on display. If you love these movies, there's no better way to connect with them than to own a little piece of the magic, something that was there on the set 45 years ago. It's the real thing. And for collectors, that's really exciting. The auction runs from September 4th through 6th. And we'll also see items including Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man 2 costume, Michael Keaton's Batman suit will go under the hammer. Right now, they explain the record was an X-Wing fighter model we sold for about $2.3 million 3 years ago. A lot of people think this is a more interesting piece, so it has the potential to eclipse that. I remember when they did the Star Trek auction years ago, right before the new movies came out, and all the stuff in that book, that was so far off, it went for 10 times, even more in some cases, how much that stuff was worth. But yeah, I mean, this is a pretty cool thing. I'm kind of wondering what happened to all of Paul Allen's stuff. Because let's not forget, when you went to the Mopop downtown, or back when it was the, the Sci-Fi Museum, when you went there downtown, they had a whole bunch of the lightsabers and other fun stuff. Paul Allen owned all of it, all said on loan from the Paul Allen family collection. And a lot of that stuff isn't there anymore. I wonder if it's caught up on the lawsuit along with everything else. Before I forget, your chance to win fantabulous prizes. Today, we are giving away a $50 Daniel's Broiler gift card. Daniel's Broiler has been a Seattle favorite since 1980. Features USDA prime steak and other specialties, including chicken and fresh seafood, as well as a selection of high-end spirits, wine, and cocktails. Daniel's Broiler is open now in Bellevue, downtown Seattle, Leschi, and South Lake Union, with dine-in, takeout, and delivery. Check out danielsbroiler.com to reserve a table, place your takeout, delivery order, and more. We are also giving away a copy of 7 Steps to a Successful Retirement by Brian Evans of Madrona Financial and CPAs. Learn how to design your retirement to support your quality of life for 30-plus years from Brian Evans of Madrona Financial and CPAs, a local company working to help you grow deep financial roots so future financial storms don't blow your life savings away. Visit madronafinancial.com for more information and discover how you can create a rooted wealth plan today. All you have to do in order to win these fantabulous prizes is be caller number 10 at 206-421-5757. That's 206-421-5757. Caller number 10 will win a $50 Daniel's Broiler gift card and a copy of 7 Steps to a Successful Retirement by Brian Evans of Madrona Financial and CPAs. Phone lines are open now. Give Mike a call at 206-421-5757. That's 206-421-5757. Well, that's going to do it for us today, my friends, but fear not. We will be back tomorrow with more insane stories, more exciting guests, and, of course, more giveaways. You've been listening to The Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI.